Stephen, let me start off with you. We spoke to George Serravalle of Deutsche Bank yesterday, and he was calling pound at 105 versus dollar. Where do you see it?
Well, first of all, on the dollar side of the equation, we see at the moment, based on tweaks to fiscal policy in the U.S., we see 5 to 7% appreciation of the broad trade-weighted dollar. For sterling in 12 months, we think cable will trade at 137. And the reason for that is because we think that the political climate in the rest of the EU will move in a direction that effectively favors the UK's position, the position that the UK has adopted under the May government. So we think that shift, that political transition in the rest of the EU as we move through the political cycles in various countries will allow the UK to secure a series of transitional arrangements and then ultimately decent fair trade deals with various countries or indeed the EU as a whole, depending on how the UK decides to approach free trade deals.
Manish, what's your take?
So I would agree with what Stephen is saying, is that, I was surprised when I heard that 105 predictions yesterday on your show. And my view is that people are ignoring the politics. It's not that, UK just wants to get the best deal for itself. What UK is asking is it should be good for EU as well. And the political climate in EU over the next 12 months or 6 months, as we are talking about, is going to question a lot about how things are happening. So what I'm saying, on one hand, people consider politics and say Brexit is bad, and this other hand, they don't consider the politics in EU.
And I understand, and we've been briefed by also many people inside the government. The problem is immigration, right? This is the red line that the EU wants to keep together. So you can have a deal that's good for both parties, but what the EU wants is this country to accept immigrants.
Sure. So, see, the thing is that let's talk about single market and the free movement of capital goods and everything.
Yeah.
I have a view that, we have free movement of people, but it is not in true sense. And the reason I tell you, if you compare this free market or this one market to US, we have language barriers. We have barriers about local laws and all. It is not quite really moving from one place to the other and getting a job tomorrow. So what I'm saying is that these fundamental 4 rights that EU keeps talking about is, according to me, is not a fundamental requirement for a market. So they keep banging about it because they want to create a United States of Europe.
It's in the treaty.
It is in the treaty, but what I'm saying is that if you become too ideological about it, to the point that you don't want to negotiate, that's when bad things happen. Because what UK asked for was a fair question. UK has the 3rd highest wage in EU.
I know, but that's like changing a mandate for the central bank.
I would also like to see where it is in the treaty that exiting countries from the EU deserve negative treatment in the negotiations. There's no law on that.
Well, we don't know. They haven't negotiated yet.
Well, the attitude that they took prior to May's speech in January was generally quite negative.
In what sense?
In terms of, inflicting punishment on the UK for its decision to leave the EU.
Right, but isn't that a negotiating position? Like we don't know actually where they'll come from, apart from the fact they said we're sticking to our red lines.
So I have a feeling that when referendum happened, it was a surprise to many people. I don't think EU thought UK could leave, else they would probably have been much better in negotiation. Tempers were running high, things were said. You see all that is mellowing down because the economic reality is the real reality. Because people want jobs, people want salaries, people want wages. And nobody is going... So if you're a Polish prime minister, if you have 200,000 Polish people living in the UK, you're not going to go with Brussels, which is going to hurt your own people. And what Juncker said on the weekend was very informative, that UK could break the EU in terms of negotiation strategy. I'm not saying that's the position or not, but that's the economic reality that EU faces.